मेहर बाबा की जय.
Yes, Jai Baba. Avatar Meher Baba ki Jai.
You going ahead?
Yeah. Uh, Three of Meher Baba's favorite couplets of Hafiz, a mystical Persian poet. Befitting a fortunate slave, carry out every command of the master without any question of why and what. About what you hear from the master, never say it is wrong, because, my dear, the fault lies in your own incapacity to understand him. I am slave of the master who has released me from ignorance. Whatever my master does is of the highest benefit to all concerned. Hafiz. Avatar Meher Baba ki Jai. Over to you, Karthik.
Meher Baba ki jai. Thank you so much. So we continue from page 61. We are in the chapter States of Divine Consciousness. And we were reading the last section, which was about, I mean, this is the new chapter, chapter 6. And in that, we are going to take up the example of an illustration that's there of a gross conscious scientist. Right? Any thoughts before we start? Okay, let's get started. Avatar Meher Baba ki jai. Example of a gross conscious scientist. Let us try to explain this situation by an illustration of what sometimes occurs, even on the gross plane, to an ordinary human being who handles tremendous power and who is, more often than not, overcome by an intense desire to demonstrate his powers. Let us compare then a subtle conscious human soul on the fourth plane, such as described above, with a great scientist of repute in the gross world. The latter being fully conscious of the gross plane by sheer dint of effort and much investigation into the fields of the science of energies, fully realizes the possibility of releasing tremendous energy through certain experiments. This scientist, we will assume for the purposes of our illustration, gradually becomes fully conscious of the tremendous energy that has come within his reach and which will ultimately come under his complete control. He then desires intensely to make use of it. Even when this gross conscious scientist in the gross world is conscious of the highest possible gross aspect of capital E energy, he is not at all conscious of that capital E energy in its nascent state, which is only of the domain of the subtle world and which can only be experienced and controlled by the subtle conscious human soul, and which can never, under any circumstances, be experimented with or experienced by any gross conscious human being. Therefore, when this gross conscious scientist in the gross world on earth is conscious of the highest possible gross aspects of nuclear energy, he is actually fully conscious of only one of the highest gross aspects of energy of the domain of the subtle world. When this scientist, who is conscious of one of the highest gross aspects of energy, which is now entirely under his control, is overpowered by an intense desire, which is also the highest aspect of capital M mind of the mental world, to use it, then the scientist's whole career hangs in the balance, and it is thus very often at stake. It is at this juncture of conflicting thoughts, which, on the one hand, provoke the scientist to demonstrate his powers, and on the other hand, soothe him to become reticent that the scientist has to be extremely careful to maintain an equilibrium. That is, balancing the tremendous aspects of energy at his disposal. It rests with him either to use it for the welfare of the world or to misuse it for devastating effects or not to use it at all. He is confronted with the irresistible, overpowering force of the predominant aspect of mind in the shape of intense desires, which haunt him with fame, name, and power, tickling his ego to the utmost towards selfish ends, irrespective of the potential destruction and devastation which can be wrought. If the scientist succumbs, therefore, to this overweening desire, which is now at its zenith, and is thereby directed for his selfish ends to misuse the power that he controls in the form of one of the highest aspects of energy, he then consciously leads himself to attempt to explode the most deadly weapon in his control, more powerful than, say, the latest hydrogen bomb. It is at this stage that the crucial point is reached. The scientist explodes his weapon, spreading devastating results, and the equilibrium which was thus far very narrowly maintained between use of power and overpowering desire is absolutely disturbed. The scientist could not content himself and was incapable of maintaining an equilibrium or balance between the tremendous aspect of energy that lay latent in his weapon, which fortified him with power, and the intense desire to explode the weapon consciously, unmindful of the unimaginable result. The tragedy of the whole thing was that the scientist, being conscious and intensely self interested in the result of the explosion of the bomb, was the first to be directly affected by the blast of the explosion, despite all of the necessary precautions taken. The immediate consequence to himself was that at first he was completely overpowered by his own experiment and was aghast, and he fell flat on the ground, absolutely unconscious. To add to this tragedy, when he regained his consciousness, he regained it at what cost? He had completely forgotten his state as a great and advanced scientist, and he was also incapable of remembering his immediate past, his boyhood, and his activities as a young man, with all of their associations with wife, children, and friends. The greatest change that took place in him was that he did not even feel that he had lost anything. That is, his memory and his consciousness of being a great scientist. The doctors call such an occurrence a case of amnesia. He had consciousness only of the fact that he was man of the most rudimentary type. He then started his life afresh, never once imagining that he had lived the life of a great man of science who had under his control vast and tremendous forces of energy. In a similar fashion occurs the tragedy of the most advanced subtle conscious human soul on the fourth plane. He, being energy personified, misuses the energy at its zenith in the subtle world and consequently loses all consciousness except the most finite consciousness, which, according to the law of evolution, has to take the most crude form of stone to experience that most finite consciousness. One of the functions of perfect masters is to guard the soul of the fourth plane from wrecking his spiritual career through the misuse of divine powers. There is a footnote. Being asked by the editors about Jesus's temptations, Meher Baba replied, "The truth is that Jesus was not tempted by Satan, but that Jesus got himself tempted and he overcame the temptations. There was a great purpose behind this. He had to get himself tempted, thereby he shouldered the burden of the forces of temptations that predominated in the world. Jesus then overcame all the temptations and in that way created a tremendous force which acted as a great setback to the forces of universal temptations. The same was true in the case of Buddha and is the same every time in avataric periods. Whenever God manifests on earth as avatar, his godhood gives a universal push and the result is universal. That is, not only the humanity reaps the benefit, but everything in the whole creation reaps the benefit of the universal push. Okay, anybody knows the biblical reference or can throw more light on Jesus's temptation? Maybe we need to research this and find out. It might be useful to know. So we were reading from here. Very often, if the soul of the fourth plane is about to lose control of his mind, his powers are snatched away by the perfect masters who can control the minds of all subtle conscious and gross conscious souls. The cases of actual downfall are accordingly rare and occur as exceptions to the rule. They must ultimately be attributed not to any failure in the vigilance maintained by the perfect masters, but to the original urge within God Himself. So, it is literally true that each and everything, small or great, that happens in the universe happens only according to the will of the Almighty. Here, it is important to know that though it is an established fact that one's full consciousness is gained in the human form, it is virtually never lost. Yet, in this case of the subtle conscious human soul on the fourth plane, there is possibility of losing the consciousness gained. This occurs if the powers of the fourth plane are misused and if the equilibrium is not maintained with the highest energy at command, counterbalanced by the overpowering allurement of infinite overpowering is the line. I'll read again from this line. This occurs if the powers of the fourth plane are misused and if the equilibrium is not maintained with the highest energy at command, counterbalanced by the overpowering allurement of infinite desires, which are the highest aspect of big M mind. Though the three fundamental aspects of big M mind are thoughts, desires, and emotions, the desires form the highest aspect of big M mind. But if the subtle conscious human soul on the fourth plane does not misuse the energy commanded by it and maintains the equilibrium by discrete use of infinite energy for the best, then the soul on the fourth plane not only crosses this threshold of the fourth plane and enters the domain of the fifth and sixth planes of the mental world, but gains consciousness of the sixth plane directly. This is because this soul, with subtle consciousness and discrete use of big E energy at its zenith, was capable of overcoming and resisting the most alluring and overpowering highest aspects of big M mind, the desires, thoughts, and emotions which were most powerfully treacherous at their zenith. Thus, this subtle conscious human soul gains directly the consciousness of the sixth plane by overpowering the desires, thoughts, and emotions at their zenith and becomes their master, who now controls them and even has the capacity to create them. Some subtle conscious human souls neither use nor misuse the tremendous flood of energy at its height liberated in the subtle world. And when such souls do not fall prey to their desires, which are also at their height, these subtle conscious human souls cross the threshold of the fourth plane and gain the consciousness of the fifth plane in the domain of the mental world. Here, these mental conscious human souls are no longer the slaves of their minds because they are now conscious of the first state of big M mind, which controls thoughts. The mental conscious human souls on the fifth and sixth planes are now fully conscious of big M mind and experience the mental world according to the degree of advancement of consciousness of the fifth and sixth planes. These mental conscious human souls of the fifth and sixth planes are no longer conscious of the degrees of consciousness of the first, second, third, and fourth planes of the subtle world, nor do they experience the subtle world any longer. Therefore, these mental conscious human souls are unconscious of the tremendous energy of the subtle world. Hence, these mental conscious human souls, although they are conscious masters of mind, are now absolutely unconscious of the power of big E energy of the subtle world. And it is for this reason that these mental conscious human souls never can perform any miracles. They can neither raise the dead, nor can they give sight to the blind, nor limbs to the maimed, in spite of their advanced consciousness being greater than the consciousness of the subtle conscious human soul. However, as these mental conscious human souls are the conscious masters of big M mind, they can control and create the minds of the gross conscious and subtle conscious human souls. For them, creating and controlling minds is but child's play, if necessary. In the case of the mental conscious human soul, let us suppose that its position is near the sun, which we have taken for our standard as a simile. This soul in human form consciously imbibes and controls the aspects of big M mind, such as thoughts, desires, and emotions, and makes in the mental world the fullest use of big M mind, which proceeds from the sun, which we, for the purpose of our explanation, consider as the source. Thus, this mental conscious human soul in the realms of the fifth and sixth planes is not only fully conscious of the mind and its aspects, but it's also capable of creating and controlling the thoughts, desires, and emotions of all other minds too. Soul is now quite stable and can never fall or slide down to any lower level of consciousness, as could the subtle conscious human soul on the fourth plane. Because the gross conscious human soul and subtle conscious human soul are the slaves of their minds, whereas the mental conscious human soul is the master of his mind. Okay, I think let's just see what all is being said here, right? So all that, yeah, I think Ashok wanted to say something.
Yeah, Karthik, the last bit is very uh, significant. You can highlight that the mental conscious soul and once again, can you just come back to the text?
Yeah, 1 second.
The last line needs to be, yeah, this one. The the soul is now,
This one?
no, no, not this one. The last line of this paragraph.
Oh, the last line of this paragraph. This one. This
Because,
one?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Because the gross conscious human soul and subtle conscious human soul are the slaves of the minds, whereas the mental conscious human soul is the master of the mind. So this is a big change which happens when you uh, progress from the fourth plane to the fifth and sixth plane. And
So it's because, yeah, it's a big, see, the change is what is dominant. So from gross aspects, you go to energy, then you go to the mind.
yeah, okay.
Now, when you go from energy to the mind, so energy means what? Energy is use of power, right?
Yes,
So if I think that the scientist example is very beautiful, right?
yes,
So
yes,
so it's just like how a scientist, when he develops something, is can in the extreme cases, and it's actually rare to start with, that somebody starts thinking of using this power because of his mind. Now, again, that's beautifully explained there. Because of his mind and his desires, which are not yet at peak but are existent, he becomes excited by using the powers that he has, thanks to that mental desire, to actually demonstrate it. And he demonstrates it at personal risk, unaware of the personal risk and the cost, and damages everything. So that's exactly the temptation of the fourth plane soul to get into using his powers, right? So the soul, uh, so I think that's the big message. So let's just
And
see.
the message is good, and the analogy is also very nice.
Yes.
Jay Baba.
So I think all that's being conveyed is this journey from the threshold, through the threshold to the mental world, right? And in the mental world, as soon as you get into the mental world, there are three levels. The three levels being the thoughts, feelings, and emotions, right? Thoughts, desires, and emotions. Feelings and desires are the same. And in that, thoughts are the most powerful, right? And when you enter the mental world and you become conscious of it, you also start controlling not just the thoughts of yourself, but thoughts of literally every soul in creation. That's big. But the big thing is it's mutually exclusive. So when you move to the mental world, you actually relinquish all the powers that are there of the subtle world. So once you successfully go through this, without the rare incident of misuse of powers, correctly helped by the perfect master in time, like Baba says, it's more an exception that somebody falls back to misuses the power because the perfect master is watching out. But he beautifully says even that exception is part of the divine plan, if you noticed, right? So even that is predicted. So in so many number of souls, there could be one or two who misuse their powers, and even that is by the will of God. And then they go back to the stone phase, the stone state. But let's say you make it past from energy, from subtle world to mental world, then you lose all the powers. So if you remember, last call we discussed about how Baba says Jesus had to come down to fourth plane to perform miracles. Now you'd wonder, hey, why should Jesus come down from a level to do stuff? So what Baba suggests there is the avatar has all the power, okay? But what is being suggested is the dominance of power is not there in the mental world or beyond. That's all, right? Any thoughts? Any comments before we get back and continue? If I don't hear any comments, I would assume it's too dense.
Continue.
Yeah, okay. No,
I was
yeah,
just
at least
wondering if there's any example of that we know of fourth plane scientist misusing his powers.
fourth plane. No. So that's just illustration, right? So there's no fourth plane scientist. That's
Okay.
I think your question is fourth plane soul that went back to stone state. Is that what your question is?
Yeah, who misused the power? Exactly what was
Yeah,
described in
I
the
don't
reading.
know. I don't know. I don't know. I'm not aware. Anybody is aware of Baba mentioning an example?
Or can
Not
relate to
Baba,
it.
but in the mythology, there are examples that the saints cursed somebody and even became in stone and all that. The
Ah, correct.
Ahilya, that
Ahalya, but
that references, yeah, that references come in Mehr Chalisa. I'm not able to recall them exactly, but there are like when and they had to be resurrected back by the touch of Rama. All those stories are there, but can't
but
explain them all.
I don't
Mythology.
remember the full story of Ahalya to
Yeah,
see
yeah,
if she reached the fourth plane and then degraded.
yeah.
So to answer Sunil's question, I am not aware of any
Yes.
specific example of a soul who went to the fourth plane and slid down to stone state. If anybody else has examples, please bring that up. And another homework is the Jesus is temptation. So those are the two things that I think we should research and share with everybody else.
Jay Baba, an area of research could be the world wars, because in the world war, nuclear energy was misused or used.
No, 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 no. Again, don't get carried away by the illustration. That's just an illustration. The
Yeah.
illustration has taken pains to explain in explainable gross terms the journey of the soul and the experiences and powers that one gets. So don't get carried away by the illustration.
No, no, Karthik,
So
I just
I'll just correct you. Let me finish my thought process. So the nuclear energy or the nuclear explosion or a war or anything is not the use of powers of the fourth planar, the fourth plane soul. That is a gross use of nuclear energy as used by souls in most likely in the gross plane. I mean, there could be some, higher planes scientist or higher planes politician. We don't know, right? But it is all very much in the gross plane. The illustration was made to specifically, and he has taken great pains to explain that illustration where the parallels are between the planes and the abilities of that scientist. So let's not get confused with that.
no, no, Jay Baba,
Yeah, yeah.
I'm not getting confused. I'm just saying we could probably find, or if we research, because in the World War, World War Two,
Yeah.
there was a use of nuclear energy, and, and there was a misuse of nuclear energy. So that could be one source. I'm just saying where we could find some answers. I'm not saying that it is the same or similar to what has been explained in the analogy. But
Fair enough. So let's explore what these fourth plane misuse are, just so that we are not confused by this for the purposes of record and just so that I'm bringing out the clarity. So let's explore what are these misuses that can happen in the fourth plane. Now let's say a soul gets to the fourth plane, he gets complete power. Now what could these misuse be? Anybody? So if I were to try to answer, uh, it could be indiscriminate use of the powers to maybe resurrect people, because you can do that. Second, indiscriminate use of making good people's loss. Indiscriminate use of overpowering natural phenomenon, just to show power, right? So you want to so the, just go back to what Baba says about uh, the use of powers and how the respect of the natural sequence of laws has to be maintained. And we'll get to that just after this chapter in Beams on the laws of divine. I'm not able to remember the chapter, but that's the next reference we'll go to. So the misuse is basically like I'm in the fourth plane. I see uh, uh, um, let's use a very crude example, right? So I see a dog crossing the road, right? And it crosses a road in a way where it's not it's irritating me, or it comes in the way of my car, let's say, right? So I just look at it and kill it just by my thought, because it's possible, right? So it's overindulgence of the power. It's an indiscriminate use, and it's disproportionate to the actual requirement, and surely not connected to from a spiritual sense, or relevant from a sanskaric standpoint. So that is a misuse of power to start with. So now let's juxtapose that to what happens in a war. A war or a large use of weapons of mass destruction are a culmination of a series of things that happen between societal structures, between countries, between alliances, between groupings of countries, and so on. And they keep over a time building up, threatening each other, and then finally use a weapon of mass destruction one on the other. Or, of course, in the world we live in, it's more targeted and it's more tactical. So we call it terrorism, right? You go and use a small weapon without representing who it is, and then it's later it's figured out, and so on. So I think that is more gross. That is more non-spiritual, and that's less likely to be a fourth planar being involved. The examples that I cited are what I can think of as the misuse. Does that make sense?
Well, I would say about probably an area of research. If there are any examples in Lord Meher or any other, uh,
Yes,
any,
yes.
and all I'm saying is that we might not have covered the whole universe of
Oh, absolutely.
literature. So there might be something which we are, at least I am unaware of, and which requires research.
At least six of us are unaware of right now. So now the onus is on picking up one of the six to be the person who does that research and reports back. Now mics won't get unmuted. Anyway,
I chose Ashok ji. I chose Ashok
okay,
ji.
done. So that's the politician from Singapore speaking. So nomination. You have been nominated to do the research, Ashokji.
Yes, I'm nominated by Norm.
Yes, yes, exactly. Okay, so two pieces of research. One, finding an example of this retrogression, and uh, or finding an example of where Baba at least talks of a soul that's used misused fourth plane powers. Second area of research, Jesus's temptation. Yeah. Okay, let's continue. Finally, the case of the big S self-conscious human soul is like a soul in the sun itself. While trying to understand the explanation, one should bear in mind that the reference to the sun is given only as a form of simile. One must not understand this sun as our earthly sun, nor misunderstand our earthly sun as the real standard of the infinite and eternal source of infinite power, knowledge, and bliss, nor must we attach any significance whatsoever to our Earth's sun, for our Earth's sun is nothing but one of the objects of creation, big C, of the soul's own creating. The biggest self-conscious human soul of the seventh plane is conscious of the sun, which we have taken as an example of the source of big E energy and big M mind. And although he invariably experiences and radiates eternally the infinite power, knowledge, and bliss in some cases, such a soul also makes use of this infinite power, knowledge, and bliss directly and consciously for the emancipation of souls from the sanskaras of the gross, subtle, and mental worlds. So here the next analogy is being played out, which is the sun, right? So sun being the source of the power. So here I think, so if you take sun to be God, right? And again, Baba is taking pains to ensure that we don't get confused beyond a point on the illustration. But he says that the self-conscious human soul, so a seventh planar, God-realized soul, is capable of both making use and experiencing infinite power and knowledge and bliss, like using all aspects of the sun, right? So I think that brings us to the end of 7. And now let's just go back to the first thing that came to my mind as the chapter reference. So let me just bring that up. Let's see. Okay. 5, part 6, yeah, 6. Okay, let me just go to the Beam's text. I think it's called intervening. The section is called, yeah, supervening orders in the spiritual panorama. Yeah, let's just go to 33, right? And the relevant sections that are to be read along with this up to now is spiritual jingoism, evil as a relic, and supervening orders in the spiritual panorama. These are relevant to what we have read. So let's start with 33. Supervening orders in the spiritual panorama. The mystery of the universe is hierarchic in structure. There are graded orders, one supervening upon the other. The spiritual panorama of the universe reveals itself as a gradient with laws upon laws. Superimposition of one type of law over the other implies elasticity and resilience of lower laws for the working out of higher superseding laws. Instead of lawlessness, it means a regime of graded laws adjusted with each other in such a manner that they all subserve the supreme purpose of God, the Creator. The lower laws are subsumed under the higher laws. We have the first law of cause and effect reigning supreme in nature. Such natural laws seem to be mechanical, rigid, and inexorable. But by acting and interacting with life force, they lead to higher laws of sanskaric or impressional determination and become superseded by them. Impressional determinism is not an exception to causal laws, but is their finer and higher form. it supervenes upon mechanical causal laws. Beautiful, right? So, well, I hope everybody's getting what's being said here. So, Newton's third law, right? That's basic, but then that's subject to impressional determination. And impressional determinism is not an exception to causal laws, but is their finer and higher form. It's just not visible to us. So sometimes causal laws are put in suspension because there is a higher impressional determinism. So anyway, there's an illustration. So let's go there. Let's take an example to illustrate the functioning of supervening orders in the spiritual panorama. The days of every incarnate soul in the gross world and what they bring are both definitely determined by the accumulated impression of past lives. But this impressional determinism does not work itself out independently of or in defiance of ordinary causal laws. On the contrary, it works through established causal laws. For example, wrong diet or gluttony or any other disregard for natural physiological laws will definitely affect the duration of the life term in the gross body. In the same way, intelligent use of known laws will affect happenings during the term of life. But whether or not there is going to be a disregard of such laws on the part of some particular soul is itself impressionally determined. That is, it is dependent upon his gathered dispositions. Thus, physiological and other causal laws are subsumed by higher karmic laws and lend themselves as pliant fabric work for them. The law of karma supersedes and uses the other laws of nature without violating them. Beautiful example, right? So, somebody is disposed towards gluttony, and that's because of his past. And thanks to that disposition of being gluttonous, he experiences obesity, he experiences etc., whatever health, and then dies sooner than maybe a non-gluttonous soul. But the sequence is the impressional determinism of his past led him to become gluttonous. The gluttonous is subject to the basic laws of nature where gluttony leads to obesity and cardiovascular disease, blah, 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 and then shorter lifespan, right? So the lowest law is the causal law. Above that is impressional determinism. Okay, let's continue. Nor are the natural laws in any way violated by what are called miracles. No miracle is an exception to the existing laws of the universe. It is an overt result of the impersonal working or conscious use of the established laws of the inner spheres. It is called a miracle because it cannot be explained by the known laws of the gross world. Here, known laws are superimposed by unknown laws. It is not a case of chaos or lawlessness. There are many examples of miracles. Giving sight to the blind and kindred achievements are brought under the category of miracles. They do not set aside the laws of the universe, but are the expression of laws and forces unknown and inaccessible to most human beings. There are some persons who, through the use of their supernatural powers, can keep their bodies alive for hundreds of years, although they are not necessarily spiritually advanced. In the same way, the lingering aura of a saint may work miracles from his burial place. The scope of miracles is very wide. Even the animal world is not exempt from the possibility of miracles. Though mammals, such as porpoises and other animals, do not have a fully developed subtle body, there is in the subtle world an equivalent or counterpart of their gross forms. The rudimentary subtle matrix, which has yet to develop into a definite and functionally self-sufficient subtle form, can still serve some purposes and become a medium for performance of miracles. Stories of sorcerers who cause schools of porpoises to come from the open sea to shore for a native feast are within the bounds of probability. But all this realm of the supernatural, cult, miraculous, and magic, both black and white, must be regarded as having no spiritual value in itself. Occult phenomena like stigmata, telekinesis, affecting the flight of objects such as communion, wafer through the air, elongation, elevation, etc., may amuse, astound, or overpower people, but they cannot bring about spiritual healing or uplift, which is the real thing that matters. They are just an illustration of a supersession of ordinary and known laws of nature by the supernatural and unknown laws of the inner spheres. The curious mind might very well occupy their minds with these things, but they are best relegated to the background as insignificant. The real lover of truth passes by these things without becoming entangled with any of them. He cannot afford to be distracted or diverted from his real objective, namely attaining union with God and releasing the radiance of his purity and love. So there were a few words that we could just quickly check on. Porpoise is a type of fish. So a sorcerer, a magician, can command a school of a huge collection of porpoises to actually come to the coast to help serve uh, as the main food for a group of people. So he's performing supernatural, not just it's an occult phenomenon, right? So then there was another term, telekinesis. I think it's moving. It's basically the supposed ability to move objects at a distance by mental power or other non-physical means, right? So these are examples of telekinesis. So something distant, you're just moving with your mind. And there was another word. Let me see it. Stigmata. These are given as examples of occult powers. Stigma is a mark on the skin. Reported cases of stigmata take various forms. So, what is stigmata? Supernatural. Oh, it's so what is stigmata? Five sacred wounds. Many show some or all five sacred wounds.
It's not. It's underneath stigmata definition, history, and
Yeah,
famous.
yeah, yeah. In Christian mysticism, bodily marks, scars, or pains corresponding to those of the crucified Jesus Christ, that is, on the hands, on the feet, near the heart, and sometimes on the head from the crown of thorns, or shoulders and back from carrying the cross and scourging, they are often presumed to accompany religious ecstasy. A stigmatic person may temporarily or permanently have one or more of these wound marks, which may be visible or invisible to others. According to Roman Catholic Church, the presence of stigmata is a sign of mystical union with the suffering of Christ, and a genuine stigmatic must have lived a life of heroic virtue. So it's a physical representation or a physical manifestation of some skin defects which are alluded to or similar to what Jesus in body experienced, and it's a mystical experience celebrated, if I can say, or respected or welcomed in Roman Catholic tradition.
It also says another example is Saint Francis of Assisi in the next line. So could it also relate to the the crucifixion of Christ.
Yeah, it's related in what way?
In the sense that you get some marks or some wounds on the body.
Yeah, I think that's what he's saying already. He does say that it's linked to. So if you see here, um, pains corresponding to the crucified Jesus Christ, that is either hands, feet, heart, and sometimes on the head from the crown of thorns or shoulders. All of these are to do with crucifixion.
Yeah, okay.
So anyway, that's interesting that stigmata example is Saint Francis of Assisi. So may I follow on the path set by Norm and add one more task to you? Can you check if Francis of Assisi and his stigmata is mentioned by Baba? Because Baba said Francis of Assisi is a perfect master, right? So, given that he has referred to him multiple times, is there reference to stigmata of Francis of Assisi by Meher Baba?
Now, Karthik, you'll also have to help me with the uh, literature. I don't have Lord Mayor. I don't have other things. Maybe I'll take some help from you or others. Whoever can help me out with the literature of related to Baba, where I can search. And I wouldn't mind if Norm or somebody else also joins hands with me, because you've given me a tall assignment, uh, and I hope I can live up to it. I'll try my best.
But in the plane that you are, you can command all the supernatural powers, put the causal laws in suspension, and then
नहीं,
finish this in a jiffy. So, all the best to you.
ऐसा कुछ नहीं है. I'm very much maybe at plane zero or just in the gross world. That's all.
Jai Baba, you're in aeroplane.
You're in what?
Aeroplane.
Aeroplane. Okay. Anyway, so let's continue. The apparent anomaly of miracles does not constitute the. Oh, we read this. Karmic clause. The factor is. No. Okay. We didn't read this. The apparent anomaly of miracles does not constitute the violation of known natural laws, but means only their supersession by other unknown laws. It also does not mean violation of the higher karmic laws which supervene upon natural as well as supernatural laws. However, among the supervening orders in the spiritual panorama, there is one important factor which transcends and controls all laws, including the supernatural laws and the laws of karma. That factor is divine grace, which is beyond all laws. God forgives sins in the sense that he does not eternally damn anyone for his sins. He keeps the door of redemption eternally open. Through repeated sincere prayers, it is possible to effect an exit from the otherwise inexorable working out of the law of karma. The forgiveness asked from God evokes from him his inscrutable grace, which alone can give new direction to the inexorable karmic determination. The only miracle which is worthy of the name is the divine grace that knows no fetters and that can control the entire universe with all of its laws. It is the last supervening factor in the graded orders which obtain in the spiritual panorama. Divine grace is not concerned with phenomena, it is concerned with emancipation and spiritual fulfillment of souls. Here, an interesting question is, does God work miracles in the narrower sense of operating the hidden laws of the inner spheres? The answer is God does everything and at the same time does nothing. He leaves everything to the natural and supernatural forces prevalent in the spiritual panorama of the universe. Although God does nothing by way of small miracles, the entire universe which has emanated from him is the miracle of miracles. The more we ponder on anything in the universe, even the meanest of things, the more miraculous it appears to the human mind. And the universe, which includes an infinite number of such items, giving to each of them an indelible stamp of eternal significance, is an unquestionable miracle because it admits of 1,000 questions but offers no answer to the limited human intellect. So, having created the supreme miracle of the universe, God does not bother about performing further minor miracles within his universe, but leaves it to the reign of laws. However, this does not apply to the God man who may, if he deems it to be fit and necessary, perform numberless miracles in supervention of the normal routine working of the universe without attaching any special importance to them. This line is exactly what Baba did, right? So he never gave it any special importance. In fact, the only thing we know is he is constantly has been in denial of it. He said there is no miracle. I don't do any miracle, right? Anyway, God does everything and in another sense does nothing. Although God does nothing, those who approach him with love and surrender derive everything that matters in the spiritual realm, even though he does not do anything in particular towards them. God may be compared to the sandalwood. It continually emits a sweet scent in all directions, though only those who take the trouble to go near it have the benefit of its charming fragrance. But we cannot say that the sandalwood has done anything in particular towards those who approach it, because emanation of its sweet scent is going on all the time, and it's not specifically directed towards any person or persons. It is available to each and all who care to come within its range. Thus, the sandalwood gives in one sense, and in another sense, it does not give. Take another example. The river gives water to those who are thirsty in the sense that if thirsty persons approach the river and drink its waters, their thirst is quenched. But the river does nothing, either to invite them to itself or to fill them with its waters. Beautiful. These examples show how God does everything and at the same time does nothing. This naturally applies to the so-called miracles, which are minor happenings within the great miracle. Mind also can be called the great miracle of the universe because it is out of the mind that the illusion of the universe arises. Mind is a parent miracle, yet the fulfillment of its destiny lies in self-annihilation. It has not fulfilled its true purpose if it does not completely disappear. I mean, these are just gems. I want to read that again, but mind is a parent miracle, yet the fulfillment of its destiny lies in self-annihilation, manonash. It has not fulfilled its true purpose if it does not completely disappear. Kya baat hai? Let's continue. The temporary clay model often has to be destroyed in order to bring out a statue of permanent importance. The form of wooden planks is raised only to be replaced later by a slab of concrete, and the hen's egg has not fulfilled its destiny until it is broken from inside by the pecking of a hatching chicken. In the same way, the mind mold arises only in order that it may be shattered to pieces and that its bursting may make possible the unfoldment of true and unlimited understanding, which is self sustained. Thus, the mind, which is the parent miracle, comes into existence only in order to vanish. The vanishment of the mind means its stopping to function as mind. In its normal functioning, the mind sees, hears, and speaks, but it has to cease this functioning. It must not see, hear, or speak through impressional goadings as it is wont to do. When it succeeds in stopping its impressional functioning, it has vanished as mind and achieved the last miracle in its vanishment. The mind is a miracle in its origin, in its functional products, and last but not least, in its vanishment, which is the pinnacle of its miraculous tenor. But the mind cannot jump over itself. It cannot stop its own impressional functioning. It can only make a somersault and hold before itself a pretense of annihilation, as do snakes and scorpions, which often pretend to be dead as a last resort to save themselves. When the mind gets annihilated, it happens not through its own somersault or gymnastics, but by an act of divine grace. We can neither deny nor explain this divine grace, which transcends all of the graded orders together with all their laws in the spiritual panorama. With the wiping out of the mind, there is the wiping out of all minor and major miracles. This is the only miracle worthy of the name and which is spiritually necessary. All other miracles, despite their imposing gradations in the panorama, are like the evanescent waves which rise and fall on the surface of the ocean without being able to fathom its immeasurable depths. The miracle of wiping out of the mind brings with it complete disappearance of all forms of manyness. The many divisions of which the mind makes too much and in which it becomes enmeshed are all within the domain of the illusion or the self-created objects of the mind. Within the domain of the objective world of imagination, there are differences. That is, between the cobra, the tiger, the man, etc. But they are not in the mind, which is the origin of this imagination. All separateness vanishes as soon as the mind, which is the creator of all the separateness, comes to its termination through the act of divine grace. Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. So, you're saying something, Sanjay?
Yeah, it's amazing. I was also saying so.
Yeah, it's just amazing, amazing. So the three, so what are the laws? What is the uh this now the title says supervening order, right? Let's go back to the title. Yeah, supervening orders in the spiritual panorama. So what is the order? What's at the bottom? What's at the top? What's the pecking order? Anybody wants to summarize? Come on, it's okay. Let's do it. Okay, let me try to summarize and please confirm or deny or add to it, please. First is causal laws. Causal laws are natural laws which are at the bottom, which are done, which are operating at the gross plane and which we call as natural laws, which we learn in science, which we know things like a magnet attracts iron. There is gravity, there is wind speed. There are so many things that we have learned in science. That is natural laws. On top of that, we have supernatural laws. What is supernatural laws? That's where the next chapter will come, which is the use of powers, right? So the use of powers by other means other than natural laws. What is above that is divine grace. And divine grace is used very rarely and is used in the annihilation of the mind and in also temporarily suspending the operations of either natural or supernatural laws, right? So to God or the God man, not any of these laws can be put in suspension and a miraculous event can be done. But that is done more in exception than as the rule. That is, it's very rarely used. And Baba also explains the idea of miracle and how what is the real miracle is creation itself, the real miracle is God, and so on and so forth, right? So that's this chapter. Very, very beautiful chapter. Anything I missed?
Other thing that I could leave, the mind is necessary, like the shell is necessary,
Yes,
and
yes.
finally it has to be broken up. Like he also gave an example of a scaffolding before a beam is cast.
Mm.
So yeah, so that's, I mean,
Yeah,
ultimately we need to
very,
think
thank you. I missed that.
whatever
Yes,
we consciously know is our mind has to finally cease to exist, and we should use it to nurture what has to come out of that. Actually, like a chicken which comes out of after breaking the shell.
correct.
That's something
And
to ponder about. Yeah.
and my favorite analogy of all time, pole vault, right? So you have to run with the pole. You have to stop at the right time and put the pole in the ground. Get the altitude so that you jump over the bar. Any of these steps, if you miss, then the mind has overpowered you, right? You have to overpower the mind, and so the mind here is the pole, by the way. So you're holding the pole and running with it, right? Without the pole, you cannot get that height, and without getting that height, you will not get God realization. But to get God realization, you have to let go of the pole, the mind, but do it at the right time and jump over the bar. Right. So I just love that analogy. Okay. So it's a beautiful chapter. Now let's get back to uh, the next one, next chapter that's linked to where we are, and the read that and then continue.
Jai Baba.
Yes, madam.
Sir, I would like to read.
Oh, sure. You want to read? Yeah. Spiritual jingoism. Over to you. 49. There you go.
Spiritual Jingoism. In no sphere of life is Jingoism more rampant than in the fields of spirituality. As in the market of good economic goods, so also in the realm of spirituality, there is the inexorable law of demand and supply. The whole world is pinning for light and freedom. To meet this recurrent and poignant demand, there always arises a plentiful supply of those who claim to meet it adequately. Most of the claimants are impositors. Those who can meet the demand adequately are extremely rare. Extremely rare also are those persons who can either recognize or profit by the true claimant. Among the seekers, there are two categories: those who are sincerely struggling with their backs to the wall, and those who pretend to seek. Those who pretend to seek and those who pretend to give are close kin in the bewildering realm of spiritual jingoism. Of course, the pretended seeker, and the pretentious saint may become closest in the arena of life and
They
play
become
their
close
game
at it.
closest,
Sorry, yeah. Close at it. Yeah,
uh,
yeah. They work together.
closest, yeah, in the arena of life and play their game in the wilderness of the world through selfish motives. Then, as Kabir has said, they both sink in the waters like a boat made out of stone. They have jointly invited their watery grave through selfish aims. In this world of innumerable frailties, frailties, the greatest of all frailties is the common fault of not being able to face, accept, and acknowledge one's own weaknesses. This is the frailty of all frailties. It gives rise to hypocrisy. Hypocrisy is said to be the tribute which vice pays to virtue. In contrast with the world of facts, man builds out of his inspired imagination another world of ideas. Sometimes he
Ideals,
imaginative
ideals.
ideals, yes.
Yeah,
Sometimes he
you can read that line again. It's a very beautiful line. In
in
contrast,
contrast with the world of facts, man builds out of his inspired imagination another world of ideas. Sometimes he imaginatively transports himself into the world of ideas. Sometimes he reverts
ideals,
to his
ideals. So hold on, hold on. So
ideals. Ideals.
both times it's ideals. So basically,
But
instead of the world of facts, man through his mind creates another world of ideals. Right. So maybe
yes.
we read again from this place. Yeah. In contrast.
In contrast with the world of facts, man builds out of his inspired imagination another world of ideals. Sometimes he imaginatively transports himself in the world of ideals. Sometimes he reverts to this realistic world of facts. And occasionally he tries to bridge the gulf between them by actually and laboriously traversing the path with slow and bleeding steps. The temptation to seize the ideal imaginatively and pose as having realized it is so irresistible that there are very few who do not succumb to it. This is the origin of the fraudulent saint or a spiritual jingo who walks and talks with his nose in the air and arms akimbo as if he was somebody very special. Among the claimants are for spirituality, there are very few who sincerely believe in their own claim and then take their stand by it. Most of them are self deceived. Such persons deceive themselves before they start deceiving others. But even if they are thoroughly self deceived, they can wriggle their way out from the tentacles of spiritual jingoism as soon as they discover that they had overestimated their own spiritual achievements. There is a faint ray of hope for their coming around to the truth because they are not consciously dishonest. On the other hand, conscious and deliberate impositors in the field of spirituality are at once the most confirmed culprits and the most piteous victims. They get stuck deeper and deeper in the quagmire of their own creation until everyone, including themselves, loses all hope of their redemption. It is of no use to attribute motives to the conscious impositor or fraudulent claimant of spirituality. The inner spiritual path is narrow and difficult. Even sincere seekers can become enticed by the allurement of spiritual jingoism before they become aware that they have fallen. But they may have the advantage of a timely beacon light flashed forth by some perfect master. Line dividing the true from the false on the steep path to truth is so narrow that it has almost no dimensions. Let us put the most charitable construction.
One second, one second. I love this line. The line
Okay.
dividing the true from the false on the steep path to truth is so narrow that it almost has no dimensions. So in math, of course, you can draw a line between 2 points and it has no dimensions. So it's a fine, it's like a razor's edge, right?
Mm.
Let's continue.
Let us put the most charitable construction upon spiritual jingoism. It can entice even sincere souls who fail to be constantly alert on the path. The process of realization appears to be a process of becoming what one apparently is not. It seems like a movement from where you are to where you are not. To give conscious direction to this process, it is necessary not only to have a perception of the goal, but also to dramatize our transportation to it in imagination. A person who wished to go to London makes preparations after visualizing all the vicissitudes of the journey. To this inevitable process, we must add the consideration that the realistic position where he is actually stationed is itself a creation of his imagination. It is very natural for a person to take imagination for reality and to believe that he is realized in his search what he has only imagined. There are some assumptions and presumptions which necessarily attend upon the divine speculation to which each seeker is inevitably drawn. All search is a struggle to arise from the false to the real. No struggle is possible unless the seeker has some initial idea, right or wrong, about the real. Further, the false cannot eternally take its stand upon the false and patently and wantonly cling to itself and remain itself endlessly. There arises the imperative need to visualize truth, to take one's stand on this imagined or perceived truth, and to act as if one has realized this cherished goal of search. This also implies a brief that one has realized it, although again and again one will be rudely shaken out of this belief by having to face the unchallengeable facts that overtake one in one's imaginative race. A sincere belief, no matter how false, does not chain the seeker irredeemably, irredeemably because he is open to correction. However, the person who knowingly and deliberately plays a false role is pretentiously airing claims for which he has no authority. He is inviting a spiritual doom. For himself, by yielding to patient illicitness, he embraces his boastful jingoism in order to exploit the simple credulity of others. The first person sincerely, but falsely, believes in his own spiritual credentials. The other fraudulently and knowingly poses as what he inwardly knows himself not to be. Far from veritable truth, the difference is tremendous. The former is confirming in perceived truth, whereas the latter is confirming his being in perceived falseness. The conscious impositor in spiritual jingoism therefore condemns himself to a self created shadowy destiny of pinging sins, piling sins, quite apart from dragging all the other credulous souls into the slippery quagmire of his own creation. He is spiritually burying himself and all who in their childlike simplicity have loved him and put their faith in him. The jingo invites his doom upon himself and others who have loved him. He cannot escape it except through an act of special grace from some perfect master. The most tragic fact in the situation is that the impositor does not deserve such grace, which alone can save him.
Okay, So
Jai
the
Baba.
million-dollar question, is this misuse of powers?
Yeah,
The jingoism is an example of misuse of powers. Spiritual jingoism.
I
Is
feel
it
it's also ego, He feels that, he's arrived at that point and then he starts knowingly or unknowingly misleading others.
correct? So it can be an example for misuse of powers, but this chapter is more general on the risks of the mind falsifying the, and not falsifying, I would say, uh, wrongly giving more self-importance, and you assume that you're already there, and then you get a following around you, and then you go from uh, uh, go down the slippery path of that, right? So it's not exactly for the fourth plane misuse of powers, but I just wanted to make sure that we see the distinction of this. But I think the other chapter was absolutely relevant, which is the supervening order in the uh, dispensing of or the operation of all the laws, right?
Mm.
Okay. Um,
Jai
maybe
Baba.
we can, yeah,
It basically uh, also highlights that you create a false, pretentious, imaginary world for yourself, which is far away from the truth. And of course, to carry out, you require the grace of the perfect master. So actually, our our solution is to always remember Baba, and he puts us in the right path.
but he also says it's undeserving. Last line. The most tragic fact in the situation is that the impostor does not deserve such grace which alone can save him.
So basically,
Does
the
he?
imposter does it knowingly that he's creating a false world.
No, I think it's not knowingly. Well, it's in a matter of speaking. So knowingly, I would say that he's under delusion, right?
Illusion. Okay.
He's under a false uh, sense of superiority or of accomplishment which is not real.
Okay. Okay.
And so, uh, so if you ask him, he's doing it knowingly. He's not unaware. The fact that people are following him, and he's giving them some messages which he thinks is right, makes it look like he's doing it knowingly. But it is false values. It's not real values. It's not bigger reality. It's not bigger realization. That's the way I would understand that, right? So, what do you think? Any other comments before we wrap up?
I feel it's also part of ego, you see. In
Oh,
a way,
absolutely ego.
yeah.
Absolutely ego. So go ahead. You were saying something else.
No, yeah, I think it's ego. And I think when the person realizes that, he's boasting knowledge which is not his, but is grace from, once he realizes that, and then I think he perhaps is deserving of the grace.
Absolutely.
And yeah, so it's
Yeah,
the switch has to happen within that person. That
absolutely.
yeah, so uh, that's what I'm thinking. I have a unrelated question. Baba dictated in many languages, and in many words there are many synonyms. How did these people know which language he's dictating in, and what is the word he's talking about?
Hmm. Interesting question. I think there was a lot more of, I mean, in the gestures, you're talking about gestures, right?
Yeah, gesture. Also, the books that he has dictated, right? So it was mostly Erich who would translate all this. How did he know which language he is speaking? And for a particular word, some of the words he has used, even in today's time, we don't know those words. How did he know
Absolutely.
those words? How did Erich know what word he's talking about? Or was it just like telepathically?
Before October 7, 1954, Baba was using the alphabet board, which was very clear cut that he was using English as a language of communication.
I see.
But of course, for shorter, where is your wife? How are you? So those kinds of things he was definitely not writing. He was just gesturing, right? So
Yes.
he was using both the modes for communication, alphabet board and also his gestures. For a wife,
Mm.
he will roll his hands on the wrist like a chudi. That's the
Mm.
answer for he will ask for mouth stretches. He will touch the mouth stretcher. So those things were always there. And after 54, of course, he dropped the alphabet board October 7th. And thereon, it was only his gestures that Irich had mastered by that time, probably. And, and he was repeating what Baba was saying. He would
Oh,
speak out what Baba said. And then if there was a change, then Baba would correct him.
I
Then
see.
that's what was finally like got down finally into books and records. That's what my understanding is.
Thank you. Yeah, Baba.
And the early books were completely, I mean, he was also writing, right? Before the alphabet board. So the progression is he
Very, very
was
early, actually. He
early,
was
early,
writing as
exactly.
early as seven, I suppose.
Stopped,
Only he
yeah.
was signing on his documents or some legal thing, passport application, those kinds of things he was doing. But writing, he had stopped long, long back.
Correct.
I think
So the
around
progression
30.
was
Yeah.
he started, I mean, he stopped writing, then alphabet board,
Alphabet.
then
Yes.
gestures, right?
Yes.
Did
But
he
So
we
did
that
have
is
he
to
a
remember,
explain?
specific date. Yeah, 7th October 1954 till
excellent.
Yeah,
69.
Baba. Did
That is
he
that
say
16
why
years.
he was doing this? Why he was dropping the board and only gestures? Did he explain why?
I think there
I
is a little more explanation that I do not need external means of communication, and I'm discarding
Oh,
this board. It was pre-announced, and there was some kind of a gathering also when Baba had dropped his alphabet board.
I'm also reminded of that Glow article Sanjay ji shared
Yeah,
recently, which
yeah,
explores
yeah.
this
Yes,
whole. No,
yes, yes.
there is some very deeper significance to his silence. It's not just that, right? There's very deep
Correct, correct.
significance, and he has not spelt it out. Uh, Other than very high profound statements like what cannot be received in I mean what
Hmm.
use is of speech when
My words.
silence yeah, and then and so on so it's very uh, enigmatic and profound as to why or what is the true purpose of his silence, but we'll all keep figuring out, I guess.
yeah, Baba. Thank you for.
Yes, and many circulars when they were typed
Yeah,
down,
Baba.
Baba would correct them. Uh,
Yeah. So that's
when
the other
yeah,
point
yeah.
I wanted to
So
make. So there
yes,
is a
yes.
lot of editorial
Editorial work
work that
Baba
goes
did
on.
that.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, not Baba did. So just to so
No, no,
let's
no.
say,
I'm saying even Baba corrected many of the things that were
oh,
like
absolutely,
drafts were
absolutely.
prepared before the circular was sent out. It has been
Yes,
shown to
yes,
Baba,
yes,
and he
yes.
would correct it.
Jay,
So
Jay Baba, one of the $1 million questions is that Baba had said that he would break his silence. So now in this uh, in this uh, avataric period, was it that what he said in the gestures is the breaking of silence, or will he actually speak out? Is a
I understand it as when he speaks through your heart and you understand his teachings. That's where he has broken his silence. That's what I understand. I don't know. Maybe
Yeah, that's very
it
personal.
wasn't actually that he's going to speak, but when, for example, in our hearts, that's the breaking. When he shows you the mirror, you understand him, you understand his power, and he awakens you. That's when he has broken his silence within you. Jai Baba.
Yeah, that could be right because that's what is mentioned in on the tomb. I've come to awaken, not to teach.
Yeah, so I think you are awakened now. You have a research project.
I'll have to.
Yes. So we'll check on that next week. Quickly, any other thoughts or questions before we can wrap up? Yeah, the last point I wanted to make, editorial is one, but Baba used to have at many times people take notes, right? So the notes will be from his gestures and the explanations by Erach. But those
Mm,
notes were written down in greater detail and presented back to Baba for editorial correction, so that there is
mm,
no misrepresentation. So my hunch is C.D. Deshmukh, Don Stevens, Ivy Luce, and all these people are some of the people that have introduced this powerful language into it, which is A, flowery, B, complex, but it has Baba's stamp,
mm.
right? So that's my hunch. I may be wrong. I'll find out when I'll share if I find out more, but that's my hunch. So P.D. Deshmukh was again a phenomenal, phenomenal control of language. Obviously, Ivy Deuce, Don Stevens, all of them were accomplished from the use of language. And Baba chose these people. Baba wanted these people to write his stuff. And he had oversight over their words and confirmed and attributed it to himself after they wrote it. So obviously, we have to completely take it as his word.
Yes, thank you, Jai Baba.
Yeah. All right. So thank you very much. I look forward to seeing you all next weekend and have a blessed day and week ahead. This is a special time for those of you from the Christian faith, Good Friday and Easter, the resurrection. So, those of you celebrating, God bless. Jai Baba.
Jai,
Jai
Jai Baba.
Baba.
Jai
Jai Baba.
Baba. Jai Baba.
Jai Baba.